Hello and welcome to Bookends, a program for teens who like to read. I'm Sue Ellen Jones, Teen Services Librarian at the Poudre River Public Library District, and I'm here to talk to you about some great reads that you're going to enjoy this summer. First, I'd like to mention the library's summer reading program for teens who have finished 6th grade through 12th grade. The name of the program is You Are Here, and it's a travel theme. I like to think of it as exploring unique destinations, both inside and outside, through books. And that's going to mirror some of the things I talk about today. In fact, you can sign up starting right now. We started on May 11th by going to the library's website and signing up online at www.poudrelibraries.org, or you can come into any of our 3 library locations, the main library, the Council Tree Library, or the Harmony Library. Starting June 7th, you can pick up your first prize when you've finished reading for 5 hours and visited 2 of the destinations inside your passport that you'll receive for this summer. Should be lots of fun. You can earn a drawstring backpack for your very first prize, your second prize when you finish an additional 5 hours of reading, and another visiting of 2 destinations in your passport allows you to earn a soft cover or hardback book. So we hope you'll check that out at the library. The first book I'm going to talk about today may seem like an odd choice to talk about in the summer. The name of the book is Winter Shadows, and it's by Margaret Buffy. It's cold in Canada, especially in the north of Canada in the winter time. The winter shadows, they lay long across the land. The shadows also lay long against the lives of these 2 girls. There are 2 girls, Beatrice and Cassandra. They have a lot in common. Beatrice and Cassandra have just recently lost their mother. And not only that, they've had to try to get used to their new stepmothers. Both of them have stepmothers who don't seem to really like them very much. They also have complicated love lives that they're trying to work out. But the similarity doesn't end there. In fact, they live in exactly the same small town in Manitoba, a province in northern Canada, and they live in exactly the same house. The only difference is that Beatrice lives in this house in 1856, and Cassandra lives in the same house 150 years later. Beatrice is the half-Scottish, half-Cree daughter of a Hudson Bay official. Her mother has died and her father is recently remarried, and she has come home from her teaching position at the Peacock Academy for Young Girls to help the family out with money. And she teaches in the local school. But her stepmother seems to hate her because she is part Cree. In fact, she has banished both Beatrice and her Cree grandmother to the attic. Beatrice is somewhat interested in the young new minister at the church in her town, but she's more interested in taking care of her grandmother in dealing with some of the strange visions that she's begun to have. Cassie has a different problem. Cass's father has just recently suffered from an injury, and he has also recently remarried, and her new stepmother, Jean, also has a daughter, and she seems to determined to eradicate any trace of Cass's mom from her home, to the point of insisting that Cass share her bedroom, which is her last refuge, with her stepsister, a whiny young woman who tells all kinds of lies and tales about her. One day, Cass is just in despair because she can't seem to get any time by herself, and her sister's away at a school function. She's looking around her room when she finds an odd locket hidden behind a stone in the wall. She notices when that she begins to wear this locket that she catches glimpses of a strange young woman dressed very oddly in a room that looks exactly like her own. A few days later, she discovers the diary of a young woman whose name is Beatrice. And she discovers by reading the diary that in fact Beatrice seems to be having visions of her. As she reads the diary, it becomes more and more apparent that Beatrice, who seems to be her ancestors, is about to make a terrible choice that will affect Cass's life herself. Can Cass get back through time to warn Beatrice about what she's about to do? She doesn't know if she can, but she knows their fates are entwined. The Maze Runner by James Dashner. When Thomas wakes up in the metal box, he has no memory of who he is or where he's been. But it's an odd thing. He can remember things like how to function in the world. He's really, really frightened until the elevator starts to go up. He's never been there before, and he has no idea at all just how it is that he ended up here. When the elevator stops after about an hour, a door opens in the top, and a hand reaches down and pulls Thomas right up. Thomas finds himself in the world of a glade. The glade is a strange place. It's a place surrounded by high walls, and there's about 60 young teenagers, all about Thomas's age. They're all boys. There are no adults. There are no girls. But in the glade, a strange thing happens every evening. The boys have to make their own living, even though they get supplies once a week to come up through the elevator. They have to farm, they have to cook. And then there are the runners, an elite group of people that Thomas isn't quite sure why he's drawn to them, but he doesn't really know exactly what they do, and nobody will tell him at first. Every night when it gets dark, though, the walls around the glade, they slide closed. And if anybody is left outside, they're attacked by a half-robotic, half-animal creature called grievers with long metallic stings on their back. A sting from a griever will kill a boy if he's unlucky enough to be caught outside the wall. And then there are some of the leaders in the glade, and one of them especially seems to hate Thomas, but he's not quite sure why. Well, one night, one of Thomas's best friends, who is a runner, has been out in the maze all day, because it turns out Thomas learns that there is a maze surrounding the glade, and they believe if they can solve the maze, they can get everybody out, they can all escape. The only problem is that the maze changes shape every night. And so the runner's job is to run throughout the day and come back at night and map what they know about the maze in an attempt for everybody to escape. Unfortunately, one night, Thomas's friend has been injured during the day, and the wall starts to slide closed, and nobody goes to help the young man who's outside the wall and can't make it in. But Thomas won't let that happen, and despite everybody telling him he cannot go outside the wall because he will die, he goes out to help his friend, and he saves him, at least for a short time, because you see, nobody has ever lived through the night when they're caught in the maze. I think this is one of the best books I've read in a long time. If you like Robin McKinley and her retelling of stories, then read Entwined. Entwined is from a new writer, Heather Dixon, and it's based on the story of the 12 dancing princesses. Princess Azalea knows what it's like to feel trapped. She is the oldest of 12 daughters, and she has lots of roles besides being her father's heir. Her mother is a very weak woman who is very, very ill, mortally sick, and Princess Azalea is her caretaker. Her mother is pregnant with the couple's 12th child, but she's too weak to bear a child, and everyone is worried about her. Princess Azalea is also the mother to her younger sisters, and unfortunately for her, a task she doesn't like, she's also the communicator with her father, the king, a man who doesn't seem to like any of his children and has no time for them. Well, Princess Azalea is finally at the age where her life is opening before her. In fact, she loves to dance. So do all of her sisters. Her mother taught them all. They're all accomplished dancers. And she is about ready to go to her very first ball, and she's looking forward to all of her suitors when her mother dies a few days after giving birth to her youngest daughter, Lily. And her father, the king, his grief takes him to a dark place, and it removes him from the girls. It makes him even more distant, and he decrees a period of mourning in which he forbids the girls to go outside the castle walls. They have to wear black, and worst of all for them, they think, there's no dancing. He wants them to use the year to properly grieve for their mother. Princess Azalea pleads with him, but he rides off to war without even saying goodbye to his children, and they make a pact never to speak to him or of him again. But then Princess Azalea discovers one of the old pockets of magic within the castle walls. One night she finds a secret passage, and she and all 11 of her sisters go down, and much to their surprise and delight, they find themselves in a silver forest with a big pavilion. A man called the Keeper greets them, and he invites them to a masked ball every night. But you know, the Keeper, he's a strange man. This Keeper likes to keep things, and pretty soon it becomes clear that he wants to keep all of the princesses unless they can outwit him. This is the book Reckless by Cornelia Funk. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? Let me give you a little clue. It's not Jacob Reckless, the hero of this particular book, or villain, if you will. Jacob has found a way to get into the mirror world on the other side of the mirror in his father's study. His father disappeared many years ago and has never returned to the world that Jacob shares with his younger brother Will and his mother. Jacob himself starts to spend more and more time in the mirror world, a place where fairy tales come true, in a way. Jacob becomes a very skilled treasure hunter and one of the most trusted and treasured servants of the Empress by bringing her wonderful magical objects, and he begins to spend less and less time going back to visit his family. But when he does, he tells wonderful tales of the different things that he's found, and Will, his brother, can't wait to try and go himself. Unfortunately, Jacob is gone when his mother dies, and Will decides to try and find his brother. And he steps through the mirror himself into a world of peril. Because you see, he's attacked by a Goyle, one of a race of stone men who are fighting human beings. And he starts to become a Goyle himself. And not just any Goyle, but the Jade Goyle. A Goyle who has prophesied that he will bring invincibility to the Goyle king if the Goyle king can find him. Well, Jacob finds Will, but he only has a short time to keep him from turning completely into a stone man, and he enlists the aid of Will's girlfriend from the real world and takes her into the mirror world to try and help save Will, as well as his friend, the shapeshifter Fox. It's a dark world on the other side of the mirror. And if you're looking for happily ever after in this book, think again. This is the book Death Cloud by Andrew Lane. It's elementary, dear reader, because this is the story of Sherlock Holmes, the most famous detective of all time, and what he was like on his first case. In fact, this book by Andrew Lane is the only book that has ever been approved for teens by the estate of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the original author of the Sherlock Holmes stories. In this book, Sherlock Holmes is 14, and he's away at boarding school. He's looking forward to going home. It's been a long year because his interests really aren't the interests of the others, when his brother Mycroft comes to visit him right before he's due to leave. Mycroft tells him there's been an insurrection in India and that his father has gone off with his unit to fight, and that Sherlock is going to be sent to live with an aunt and uncle that he's never seen before. The trip turns out like he expects. He has pretty low expectations, and his aunt and uncle fulfill those. But he does meet some interesting people. One of them is named Matty. Matty is a very interesting person. He's very poor. He's an orphan, what's called an orphan canal boy. He owns a boat, and he lives on the various canals that crisscross that part of England. Matty has seen something that frightens him to death in the village. There was one day he was walking through the village, and he hears this terrible scream come out of a window, and then he sees a cloud of some kind coming out of the window. And some of the other townspeople see it too, and they're afraid that there's an outbreak of the plague. And Sherlock Holmes begins to be frightened by that himself when he sees a second man die in exactly the same way. The problem is that two men have seen him observe this. They're henchmen for the Baron Malpertuis. Nobody really knows what he's like, but he certainly doesn't want any witnesses to the deaths. And so he begins to chase Sherlock and his friends, and they find out that it's only the two of them that may stand between the destruction of the British Empire and the safety of everything they hold dear. This story is called Prisoner in the Palace: How Princess Victoria Became Queen with the Help of Her Maid, a Reporter, and a Scoundrel. Now, in Victorian England, this is the story of Victoria before she became queen, when she was the heir to the throne in Kensington Palace, and everybody around her, including her mother and her friends, seemed to want something from her. But this isn't the story really of Victoria. It's told through the eyes of her maid Liza. Liza didn't start out to be a maid. In fact, Liza was due to make her society debut when her wealthy parents died in a sudden carriage accident. When she's invited to the palace to meet Victoria, she's happy because she has no money, and she's just sure that Princess Victoria is going to invite her to be a lady-in-waiting and all of her problems will be solved. But it's not that at all. She's invited to the palace, but she's invited to be Princess Victoria's maid. And the Baroness Leighton, who's one of Victoria's few friends in the palace, wants her to spy on Victoria's mother and Sir John Conroy, the comptroller of Victoria's household, that she suspects is taking money from the estate. Well, soon, Liza finds herself in a really tough spot. She seems to be learning how to do the maid things, but everybody, including Victoria's mother and Sir John, want her to spy on the princess, and Victoria herself wants a little bit more freedom. So how does Liza balance this and help Princess Victoria get to the throne at a time when it seems that the odds are insurmountable? Read Prisoners in the Palace and find out. If you like Survivor of any sort, or adventure, or wilderness, this is the book for you. It's a good read for the summer if you're tired of reading long books. This book is called Revolver by Marcus Sedgwick. Sig is by himself. He's been by himself before, but never with a dead body. And the dead body belongs to his father. He found his father that morning trying to cross a patch of ice along the river that was thinning. And he's puzzled by this because his father is a consummate outdoorsman and knows how to survive in the north. And he's not sure why his father would have chosen to try and go across that particularly tricky patch of ice. Well, he's home and he's inside and he's alone with the body of his father. His sister and his stepmother have gone off and taken the dog sled to try and get to the nearest town and get help. But the nearest town is hours away and it's brutally cold. You see, it's 1910 and they live 100 miles north of the Arctic Circle. Even if he'd had help, Sig, he wouldn't have been able to bury his father. But his father always had said an interesting thing. Einar had always told him that even the dead tell stories, and he's about to tell one of his own. There's a knock at the door while Sig is waiting for his sister to come back. And he's puzzled because he thinks, well, she couldn't have gotten back already. And he goes to open the door and there's a big hulk of a man waving a gun at him. And he comes in and he demands the gold that he says Einar stole from him 10 years before. When Sig tells him that he doesn't know anything about any gold, in fact, that the family is poverty-stricken and that his father has just died, the man, Gunther Wolf, says, well, then I'll have to torture you until you tell me. And the first thing Sig thinks about is the way that his father died and wonders if he's left any clues. And he also thinks about the revolver that his father showed him that's hidden in the storeroom in a coffee can. Can he get to it? Can he save himself from this man who insists that he knows the truth about the family? find out. Here's an old friend for many of you, sorry. This book is Bartimaeus by Jonathan Stroud, and it's called The Ring of Solomon. There's a trilogy that came out, starting with the book The Amulet of Samarkand. But this is a prequel. This is the story of Bartimaeus before that happened. It's 950 BC, and we're in Jerusalem. We're in the kingdom of Solomon. But it's a kingdom that is different than you may have read about other places, because Solomon is a ruler with a ring of great power. A turn of the ring and Solomon can conquer kingdoms. He can make anything he wishes come to be. And how does Bartimaeus fit into all this? Well, if you remember, even if you don't, Bartimaeus is a fourth level genie who's very, very cunning, but he's constantly getting called back from the world of all of the demons and the netherworld because he's too fond of bragging about all the tricks he knows how to play. And so most of the magicians know his real name and they can conjure him back. And that's exactly what happens in this book. He's been called back to help the machinations of an evil magician named Kobo. Kobo is one of the most able magicians in Solomon's kingdom, but he has his own designs on the throne. There's another story too. Solomon has several hundred wives, but he has just sent a proposal, a wedding proposal, to the Queen of Sheba. And if she doesn't agree to be his queen, he will overrun her kingdom. Well, as always, Bartimaeus gets himself into trouble by playing too many tricks, and the king banishes him to the outreaches of the kingdom to try and track down the bandits who are robbing various trains of merchants who are traveling through the desert. Bartimaeus meets up with an unusual young woman, and as it turns out, her name is Asmira, and Asmira rescues him from a tough situation and binds him so that he has to help her. And what is she doing? She's on a mission. She is the captain of the Queen of Sheba's personal guard, and she's been sent to assassinate Solomon and to take his ring. Somebody Everybody Listens To by Suzanne Sepley. You know, one of my favorite country and western singers is Dolly Parton, and Dolly Parton always says that you won't get very far unless you have the courage to try something. Well, I knew I was going to need to be brave and to have courage to do what I'd always wanted to do. I'm a singer. I can sound like anyone I want. Everybody always says I can sound just like Loretta or Emmylou, any of those singers, that I'm really good at doing that. And so my dream has always been too big for my tiny little town of Starland in Tennessee. Ever since I could play the guitar, it's always been my dream when I get out of school to go to Nashville and to make it in the music business. I'm just about to try to do that, but there's a few problems. One of them is my mama and my daddy. They don't get along too well. My daddy, I slip him money sometimes to help him pay the rent because, you see, he hurt his back real bad and sometimes it can't work. And my mama's no help at all. She's always complaining about my daddy even when she goes off to her own job. And then I work in this diner, you see, and I don't like the man I work for. It's kind of a greasy man, but it is money. I only have $500, so I'm going to have to be real careful with money. But there are people who believe in me. Why, my friend, she bought me a cell phone, and she paid for it herself so that I could call her and tell her how I'm doing. And even my crotchety old aunt, who never gave me a thing, has lent me her car. It's an old car, but it runs good. Well, nobody could have told me what would happen when I get to Nashville. First of all, my car broke down. I had to have it fixed, and it took almost half of my money, and then some kids on the street took the other half, and I'm having to live in my car. But the nice man who fixed my car, he gave me a place that I could stay for a little while, and I'm working for him during the day, and at night I finally found a job, this run-down old motel on the outskirts of Nashville, and tour buses come through there, and I sing, and they seem to like me. The only thing is, the bartender there, He's in the music business. He's a songwriter, and I really want him to like what I'm doing, but he says I sound just like everybody else and that there's nothing unique about me. And my mama, I've just heard that she's left home, so I may have to go home after all. You know, it's easy to talk about being brave, but it's a lot harder when you actually have to live with things. This is the story of The Last Full Measure by Anne Rinaldi. Gettysburg, the Battle of Gettysburg, was one of the turning points of the Civil War. Of course, the people who were in the battle didn't realize that at the time. But first of all, we have the Confederate Army under the generalship of Robert E. Lee. He had about 75,000 men that he took to the Battle of Gettysburg, while the Army of the Potomac, the Union Army, under the leadership of another general, had about 90,000 soldiers. When they met at Gettysburg, there was a 3-day battle, July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of 1863. And this battle has the dubious distinction of the fact that more American soldiers, almost 50,000 of them, on both sides were casualties. But this book isn't about the soldiers. It's about the people who were left behind in the war, the people who lived in Gettysburg themselves. Tacy is 14 years old, and she lives in Gettysburg with her mother and one of her older brothers, David. Her 2 other brothers and her father, who's a doctor, are fighting in the Union troops far away. Why is her older brother David at home when so many soldiers are needed? Well, David is 21 years old, and he's always been her closest brother, but not anymore because David is bitter. David wants to go and fight in the war. He wants to help the Union cause, but he has a withered right leg that won't allow him to fight. And so he's been asked by his father and his older brothers to take care of things at home. Somehow, though, he thinks taking care of things at home means that he has to talk about every single thing that Tacy does. Well, that town changes hands several times during the Battle of Gettysburg. When the Confederates ride into town, they take and herd into a group the 400 free blacks who live in Gettysburg, and they sell them down south. And Tacy tries to hide one of the young free black girls who's become one of her friends, and it's only through the kindness of one of the Confederate officers that she is not sold into slavery. The Confederates steal her precious horse, they steal the cow, they steal almost everything that isn't bolted down. But when the Union soldiers come through the town, things aren't much better. And then there are the stray bullets, and one of those kills her best friend. Her father makes it home for a short visit, and he talks to David about how important it is to protect his sister and the mother. But in fact, even after the battle is done, this family is going to have to give the last full measure of sacrifice. Read The Last Full Measure. Thank you so much for listening to me talk about these books today. I hope you'll read some of them. There's some wonderful, wonderful things to read. They'll take you to a different place too. And please remember to come into the library and sign up for the Teen Summer Reading Program. You are here. Thank you. Happy reading.